And you want to ingratiate yourself in the city of brotherly love, do it by tossing a no-no in your home debut, Jake Peavy.
The Phillies in general have good mojo going. Watching the crowd get Trey Turner going, you know, the tide has turned in Philadelphia. Michael Lorenzen, we're going to talk about it. Was it the best trade line acquisition? Right now, you got to believe it's, if not the best, one of the best. 8 innings of 2-run ball in Miami, and now this. Last night, the changeup. X will tell you, the changeup is an optical illusion. He used it last night, and you see right here, you know, the walks 10-5 is the only thing that stands out to me is a bit concerning. But 17 innings you're talking about in today's game for 2 starts. Michael Lorenzen can flat out pitch. Watching him explore and use the changeup more last night speaks to JT Realmuto, who we just heard him give credit to. Starting to look like a match made in heaven, and Philly's looking posed to make the same kind of run they made last year.
We were talking about the battery, right, and trying to get to know someone, you know, after being traded. We can talk about that here in a minute. I was reading 124 pitches. He didn't shake off a single pitch, even when things got loud at the bank, and the pitch calm was tough to hear. X, when you look at this feat, and Jake Peavy was kind of talking about this being one of the best trade deadline acquisitions, that Dave Dombrowski kind of waiting in the wings, not making a lot of noise, not tipping his hand, but he did pick Lorenzen up from Detroit, and clearly it's paying off, and the Phillies are starting to look like the Phillies of last season.
Yeah, it's almost weird because we call it almost an underrated move, but every single franchise would have been after Michael Lorenzen because of what he's been able to do this season. And the funny thing for me is that Lorenzen's had to prove that he's a starting pitcher for a long period of time before even getting to this point. This is the most innings he's thrown since 2015, his rookie year, the last time he made more than 20 starts. So I look at this situation and I say, I'm so happy for the guy, because to prove who you are over and over again, but then ultimately to do it with a new team and do it immediately where they expect results and they're looking to get to the postseason, that means that much more to me. And it shows to me that he's cool under pressure. He understands the opportunity that he has with this Phillies team. And the sky's the limit for this guy. And I think he's just now starting to reach some of the potential this year. And it's going to be fun to watch him continue to do it.
The Phillies needed depth in their starting rotation. Aaron Nola, who's going on the mound tonight, has an ERA above a 5 in his last 5 games. Ranger Suarez, batters are hitting .380 against him their first time through the lineup. This is the perfect opportunity for the Phillies to provide what they need in the playoffs of depth like Lorenzen, which is why, and people have attacked me on Twitter for this, between Flaherty and Lorenzen. I said the Lorenzen wouldn't have been a good fit for the Orioles because the Orioles really needed a number 1. The Phillies didn't need a 1, they didn't need a 2, they needed more. The Orioles got Flaherty, and Flaherty looked really good in his first start, and now Flaherty in his second start gave up 3 runs. So I'm not going to sit here and say to everybody like, oh yeah, like if the Orioles got Lorenzen, it was what they needed. No, the Phillies got what they needed.
The Phillies did get what they needed in Michael Lorenzen, and you're exactly right. Nola and Wheeler, they carried a big load, your Phillies, and you were on that postseason run. Those guys were electric. Having this guy come in fresh, new face. Last night he said he played with 10 of these guys before. So, and you could see last night he was moving around that dugout, laughing and cutting up with his teammates all the way down to the end. A gracious interview in the Philly postgame with us last night. Michael Lorenzen is what's great about baseball. You hear him talk about never giving up. And you also hear him talk about, I wanted to throw a no-hitter, and I watched Nolan Ryan do it.
That's so cool.
Right. You watch something, you get it down deep in your heart, and you get it up here in your mind, and it becomes reality. Last night was special. Like I said, they're riding a special wave in Philly.
They really are, right? Yeah, you're speaking my language. It really is not just about the talent on the roster that, you know, Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fold have been able to assemble. We're listening to the story about Rob Thompson, like going back towards that clubhouse in the tunnel and talking to Lorenzen going into the 8th. And he's like, do you have it? And he said, I'm putting you on a pitch count. So you're going to have to get through the 8th and 11 pitches. Guess what? He settled down. He did it. But his manager believed in him. And I guess my point is, it's really about the culture with this team. His teammates wanted this just as bad. if not more,
Well,
than he did for him,
Rob
because
Thompson's a
it really
hero.
is a family. And Rob Thompson is a cult hero. Yes, he's been in the game for like 40 seasons.
I don't know if that happens with other franchises, and it's not an old school manager. I don't know if Lorenzen gets to have that moment. And what we all would have been robbed of, baseball for the fans. Combined no hitters are great, but there is something special about getting behind one guy and going out and doing the unthinkable at that level. Hats off to Rob Thompson, the Phillies organization, for letting that be.
Yeah, I was about to say hats off.
It takes courage in today's game with the analytics driving a lot of our decisions.
I was literally
Guys.
about to say that, X. Hats off also to the front office for allowing Rob Thompson to manage his team and listen to his players.
Yeah, I continue to think about, obviously you need that type of culture within a clubhouse, within a team aspect, and they've already built upon that last year as well. That's why I've always kind of felt like the Phillies would be able to come out of wherever they were at earlier on in the season. And now I figure that this team has the staff. And I actually wanted to ask Peavy, because I thought it's interesting now that he switched over teams and now has a different catcher. I played with JT Realmuto. I understand how everybody loves him, but at the same time, being traded, that's not an easy thing to do, and get along with your battery mate as soon as you get there. Now, I want to know the kind of the transition into becoming a pitcher that has a new battery mate, because I know Peave has went through it through the trade deadline, being traded before. What is that ultimately like, and how do you strengthen that relationship as soon as possible?
Well, that's a great question, X. And look, when I heard him, I asked that question on MLB Tonight, how was the relationship and how many pitches did you call? And he said JT has called every pitch that he has thrown.
Wow.
And it reminds me of great pitchers like Veritek, watching Josh Beckett get with Veritek and just do a lot of what Tech's game planning was. When a pitcher can just think about execution of the pitch and not having to read the swing and go all into the pitch
Not being the
calling.
chess match.
Right, you're free. And Lorenzen, probably in Detroit, and this is not any knock against their catchers, you're trying to manage that. What's the right pitch to throw and what happened in that swing? You're in between that. When you have a catcher like JT, like Adley Rutschman's been for Baltimore, like Buster Posey was for me, David Ross. You talk about being traded over. When I got traded over to Saltalamacchia and David Ross in Boston, these guys were as prepared as anybody and knew that they were going to win the game by giving up 0 runs. When you have that kind of trust, X, it's easy to go out there and just execute. You're free in the moment. JT Realmuto needs to get all the credit in the world for calling every pitch of this guy's last 2 games. He not only prepared for the team, but also had to watch tons of video on what Lorenzen does well. And last night, we saw him reach out and throw more changeups than he's ever thrown. That speaks to JT going, this is good. You need to use this more. So my hat's off to JT, all the great catchers out there running the game.
Yeah, you see those great lists of these pitchers that have thrown these no-hitters or accomplished these great feats. It would be nice to see their battery mates added to those lists, because JT Realmuto does deserve a lot of credit.